All right, explanation of last night's homework. Let's take a look. So what we have in this first SAT question is which of the following equations represents the line shown in the graph? A couple things we need to know. We talked a little bit about linear equations and what we can tell about them. You can look and you can see that this is a positive slope. We discussed that. So you're going to look down and make sure you're looking at positive slopes. The beautiful thing is that everything here is in y equals mx plus b form. Therefore, you can identify the slopes here. So this slope is 6. This one is 1/4. This is 4 and this is 6 as well. Then we have information about the y-intercept. So those are the two things that we have that we're going to use to determine what's going on. All of these slopes are positive, so that's not particularly helpful. This is not really steep, so I'm thinking that the 6 and the 6 probably don't work. And also, the 4 doesn't either. If you look at your rise over your 1, notice that these are all 1s. It goes up 1 over 4. So you can tell that the slope is 4, and then to confirm, your y-intercept is 6. So you're going to feel confident about that and circle that. Let's look at number 2. All right, in this lemonade stand problem in number 2, we're given an equation P is equal to 2C minus 8.5. We're told that this is the profit equation. What does profit mean? Profit means the money that you get after you take the revenue, the money that's coming in, and then you subtract out the cost. And so this makes sense to be the money that comes in, and this makes sense to be the cost. If you look at all of these, the price of a cup of lemonade would most likely make sense to be number 2, to be the value of 2, what 2 represents. Yeah, and so we can look at the other answer choices and see that they don't fit very well. The minimum number of cups, that has nothing to do with the number of cups. The cost, and you can think about it this way, if 4 cups were sold, then it would be 2 times 4 minus 8.5, and you can see that just by selling that many cups, you don't really make a profit. In fact, you're in the hole 50 cents. Does that make sense? All right, hope so. Let's look at number 3. Okay, so Darian is looking to purchase some shirts for his job. A couple bits of information that we need to highlight here and make sure that we're on point with is that highlighter is right there. We need to make sure that we recognize that he sees a search for $35, but it's 40% off. So if you're taking 40% off, you're leaving 60% on, meaning he's going to pay 60% of the price that he originally was supposed to pay. So that would be $21 would be the cost of each shirt, all right? After the sale price. So after that, what you need to do is recognize that each tie is going to cost $21, or the tie costs $21. So now we need to figure out what is the equation that represents the situation if Darren buys X number of shirts and he buys 2 of the blue ties. Well, if he buys 2 blue ties, we recognize that that's going to be $42. And we don't know how many shirts. That's going to be $21 for the sale price times X. So our equation should look something like this, and we see that we have that right here. So your answer is C. There are a couple of approaches that you can use with this problem. The fact is, when you're taking the SATs and it's not an open answer problem, the answer choices are there. So you can literally, if you have a calculator, and this is a calculator opportunity, which it's not, doesn't have the little fancy calculator symbol, but if you could use a calculator, you can simply plug it back in there and check it out. Most people are saying fractions and you're saying decimals. You're like, fractions and plugging it into another fraction, that might feel uncomfortable. I personally am a bit of an algebra beast, so I would do the algebra. I would actually do the work. So let's get started with that. This is just an equation where there's one variable. I can solve it even if it's complicated. So that's what I'm going to work on. I remember multiplying fractions. I get to multiply numerator times numerator. So I have 3z over 12 minus 7 is equal to distributive property in the house, negative 6z plus 8, right? Negative times negative is a positive. Now I need to join all my z terms on one side and my regular numbers on the other. I'm going to put my z's over here and my regular numbers on the other side. This is 3z over 12, which can be written as z over 4. You see the reduction here? That's like 1/4 minus, or actually I'm going to be all fancy and do a couple things at one time. I'm throwing this guy over here. So that's going to become a positive 7 over there, and this guy's going to come over here. So instead, I'll have plus 6z, that moved from here to here, and this over there gives me a negative 15. Lied to you, just lied, positive 15. And so now I'm going to join this together. Now I've got 2 different denominators. Let's make the denominator 4. So this is now 24 over 4. Get it? 4 divides into 24 6 times. Therefore, I'm talking about the same thing. So z plus 24z, you feel me, over 4 is equal to 15. So I get 25z over 4 is equal to 15. If you got to this part, we gotta just make sure we can finish it up. I know I'm writing all in the next problems. That's gonna be all right. So here's what I need to do. To undo this coefficient that is a fraction, I multiply by the reciprocal. What I do to one side, I do to the other. Remember, the reciprocal, when I multiply a number by its reciprocal, I'm going to get 1, which is what I want, because now I'm only dealing with one z. Okay, so now I'm only dealing with the 1z, and that makes me pretty happy. And then when I multiply fractions, remember 15 times 4 gives me 61 times 25 is going to give me 25. So now all I got to do is reduce it. Well, I know 5 goes into both of these, which is fine. So 5 goes in the top, 12 times 5 goes into the bottom, 5 times, and so 12/5 is my answer. And booyah, I'm feeling good about myself. Let's look at the next one. Here, number 5, we're given 2 points, and we are going to figure out what the slope of the line is. And this is pretty basic, but you know, if your skills on with decimals aren't really keen, so you might feel a little uncomfortable. So the rule is, if you have 2 points, let me make this a little bit better, do a better job, Dion. If you have 2 points, I'm going to call one of them x1, y1, and the next one x2, y2. If you have these 2 points and you wanted to find the slope, you're just going to do the change in y over the change in x. And so it looks like that. It could also honestly be written as y sub 1 minus y sub 2 over x sub 2, x sub 1 minus minus x sub 2. I should not change it because it's confusing me. All right, so the reason why we can do that, what I want you to see is that the only thing you need to make sure of is that you have the same xy pairing over top of each other when you're doing the subtraction. So it's the change in y over change in x. All right, now that we've gotten through that little reminder, let's go ahead and do what we want to do. So I'll call that x1, y1, and I'll call this x2, y2. And so if I do the change in y, that's going to be 5 minus 3 over the change in x, which is going to be negative 3 over 2 minus a minus 7 over 2. When I do that, I get 2 over, I'm going to add those together, negative 3 over 2 plus 7 over 2 basically is going to be 4 over 2, which I understand to be 2. So then I get 2 over 2. You with me? Right? You see how I did that? Negative 3 plus that gives me, okay, no. So 2 over 2, which is equal to 1. And so my answer is a positive 1. All right? Change in y over change in x. Can't go wrong. Okay, so here we don't have the benefit of actually feeling confident about having an answer choice that we can plug in, but we're tough. We can solve equations even if they're not fun. So that's what I'm going to get ready to do right now. So I took the liberty of actually rewriting this. I wrote that wrong. Let me go ahead and change that real quick. So this should be a 24. And so what I'm going to do is recognize that you got the use of a calculator right now. I'm not always fond of doing big numbers in my head because I always make mistakes. So I distributed property. I got that. I used my calculator where I needed to. This looks a little complicated, but here's the thing. This is 204 times 7 over 24. Multiply 204 times 7 and then divide by 24. You get 59.5. At this point, this is a regular problem. You're going to move all your x terms to one side and move your constant terms to the other side. So when I subtract 59.5 from both sides, I'm going to end up with 42.5x over here. When I add 850 to both sides, I get 850 over here because I move that, move that. At this point, I'm feeling really good because these numbers look like they're going to mesh together well. I could pull out my calculator and do this, and I'll get that x is equal to 20. So then when this isn't really a great visual on this, but let me see if I can make this bigger real quick. Whoa, too big. Over bigification. All right, so the answer is 20. When you put your answer in, you can put your answer, nice, you can put your 2 there and your 0 next to it when you're filling in your answer key. Does that make sense? I hope it does. So you got your 2 and your 0, and then you're going to fill in 2, and then you're going to fill in 0, and you're going to leave everything else blank. All right, let's look at another problem. So number 7 is going to refer back to some concepts that we talked about before. We talked about looking at linear equations and kind of thinking about what we know. We know that this is a positive slope, negative slope, 0 slope, and an undefined slope. So this problem is talking about a situation where we have an undefined slope. An undefined slope is written as x is equal to some value c. That's how the equation is written anyway, because there is no like y equals mx please situation that can describe this. And so that's when this value is c. So you get a vertical line through c. That's your that would be your undefined slope equation. So this equation here, which is related, is actually a y is equal to some b term. This is an equation where we have 0 slope. The reason why I'm pointing these guys out is because we're talking about an equation with an undefined slope where x is equal to some value c, and it is perpendicular. The word perpendicular means together that line and some other line forms a 90-degree angle. So which of the following could be the equation of line M? Well, if I look at all of these other equations, what can be, or other lines, what can be perpendicular to this? Only this guy. So what can be perpendicular to an undefined sloped equation? It has to be a zero slope equation. So I look through these and I see which one is a zero slope equation, and I get this one. Let's do a quick process of elimination. This guy is an undefined slope as well. It'll be the line where that goes through x equals -3. So that's what this equation looks like, and clearly that's parallel to this one. This is not even linear, so this is like off the table. The xy line is the line, let me use another color, that where y is equal to x. So if x is 1, y is 1, x is 2, y is 2, x is 3, y is 3. Get it? So that's why by process of elimination I can see that even if I didn't really know what this looked like, I can tell what the answer is. Let's look at number 8. So here in number 8, what I'm looking at is that we're talking about some line that passes through these points that will never intersect something else. Lines that don't intersect are parallel. We kind of talked about it last time in the last problem. So we know that we're looking for something that is parallel. So we don't really need to know like the equation of the line. What we do need to know is what the slope is. So I'm going to perform the simple thing that we did last time where we figure out what the slope is by doing change in y over change in x. So this time I'm going to go this minus this, -6 minus a -4 over, and notice I'm keeping the same direction, 3 minus a -7. And what that's going to give me is -2, because minus minus gives me a plus, and this is going to give me a +10. Therefore, my slope is -1/10. Ah, just lied to you. See, children, you got to keep me honest. -1/5. Because that reduces. Yeah, okay. So now I need to look to see which one is going to have a slope of -1/5. And the best way for me to find the slope of anything is to solve for y. You guys were working on that earlier. So if I solve this equation for y, I just chose this one because it's easy. I get 2x minus 9, just moving the 2x over to the other side. And it ain't that. If I solve this guy for y, I can kind of anticipate what's going to happen. I'm going to get 2y, the x is going to go over to the other side, and when I divide by 2, I still don't get that -1/5. So that's not it. Already I'm looking at this, I'm not thinking that that's going to turn into that 1/5. This looks like it's going to turn into the 1/5 situation. So just to confirm it, I got 5y, I'm throwing the x over to the other side, so I get -x is plus 6, that's equal to 5y, divide everything by 5, and I get y is equal to -1/5 x plus 6/5. All this other crap really doesn't matter. Like this part, they just asked me to figure out which one of the equations would be parallel. That's basically what this was code for. So if I could have eyeballed these and just been like, no way that's 1/5, no way that's 1/5, no way, this is the only one with a 5. If you didn't have any other ideas, guess and check, or if you had to just make kind of an educated guess, I would have chosen A because of that 5 right there and the fact that I knew I'd have to manipulate it and get -1/5.